Gold, BYN, like Nancy on the TSX venture. Tara, there's a lot to unpack today, to use a podcast terminology. There's a lot to unpack, and I want to do it in chronological order. So I know people want to really hear about a couple of specific topics, but let's go back to late June, June 21st, June 22nd timeframe, and you decided to do a financing at that time. And there had been, and by the way, when you're not speaking, just put it on mute so there's less background for the audience. Yeah, so you decided to do a financing at the end of June. There was some tax rate changes in Canada. I don't fully understand it, but I know that it had some big implications on the flow through side. Of course, I'm in Florida, so I don't pay taxes in Canada. But you guys decided to do a $14.3 million financing. And it was kind of a surprise to some people. And I want you to just walk us through how that came together, why you decided to pull the trigger on the financing. As it turned out, it was a brilliant move, because if you hadn't have done that, Banyan would be in a much worse place here right now.
Yeah, there's kind of a saying in the junior market: if you're offered money, you should take it. And so, I knew we had a really solid geological plan. We still had money in the bank. I wasn't planning to finance till we got our results back, and I could demonstrate, what we were seeing, and which is really that higher grade zone which we think will really be important for the economics. And we got offered some money from good shareholders. My existing shareholders had, the majority participated and said, yeah, we support doing a financing. So, for me, that's a little bit less dilutive than if you're giving it all to a brand new person at those kind of prices. And, my gut just kind of told me, take the money. And then there's a lot of uncertainty about what that was going to mean for the tax changes on charity flow through, where you get a fairly significant premium to the share price. And it's because donors who are donating to a charity are able to get an advantageous tax advantage, and the junior mining company ends up placing their shares with a known shareholder. And so that those rate changes were significant. We didn't know what it would mean for the regular flow through premiums as well. And so all of those factors, along with, a good new shareholder that wasn't getting a huge position and may want a larger position later, along with my existing shareholders, really made me go, I should just take the money. It really secures Banyan for this year and even through 2025. And so we launched it, and it was pretty fast. We launched it on the 12th of June, announced it, and, filled it in 24 hours, and then closed it 8 days later on the 20th. So it was very fast. That's because it was lined up, and that, to me, I'm thankful I did it too. I don't know. My gut told me to do the financing, and of course, didn't know what would happen later in June.
Okay, so you always take the money, especially when it's good money from strong hands, But we hear that term "strong hands" a lot in the junior mining sector, and then all those people turn up, they turn out to sell the stock anyway. So can you tell us about some of the participants in that, and do you really think they're long-term shareholders?
Well, I do know some have sold. I've been in communication with many of the shareholders. For lots of funds, have different investment criteria, liquidity constraints. So it's not always whether or not they like the stock or think it's going to, in the long term, recover. It really depends on what their investment criteria, horizon, and constraints are. I do know many of the funds that participated are holding and have said, yeah, we're long-term holders. We know these bumps happen, and are with you for the longer term. And as a CEO, you need to kind of know who those people are, and know the ones that are probably going to have to sell. And there's been a lot of volume. I think probably around 28 to 30 million shares. I was tracking it, and we will know I've been calling my shareholders who've participated in the financing and who've been long-term shareholders, because that's a better way to kind of understand where people are at. So that term of strong hands, of course, is all relative. People have different risk tolerances, and you hope they're strong hands and you think they're strong hands, but ultimately, when things like this happen, you find out what their different investment criteria are.
Yeah, I think since the end of June, Banyan's traded almost 40 million shares, if I'm not mistaken. Absolutely enormous trading volume. Um, okay, so the financing happened, gave you a full treasury, gave you plenty of cash well into next year, and hopefully to come out with that Maiden PEA in 2025. It turned out to be a great decision because, again, if you hadn't have done that, it'd be a lot more. It'd be more challenging than it already is right now. So tell us about what the objectives of the summer program are. What have you done so far? And is that higher grade, near surface pit taking shape? I know we spoke in June. You said the objective really is 2 million ounces in the indicated category at an average grade of 1 gram.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what we think will give this project very compelling economics in a pit that's mineable. So, we did, and we found that by looking at our resource and really understanding the details of the block model, like hole by hole, went through every section to really understand what was going on geologically. We pulled the core out, had our team go and actually look at it, look for things that would be structural or geological constraints, or give that consistency between holes. Then we did those scoping studies, which gave us where the pits would be from an engineering perspective, and then we overlaid the two and went back and designed our drill program based on that. And we started our program early before we financed. Really wanted to get some validation that what we were doing and the model and what we were seeing from that work we did over the winter was correct. And so, we're now about 6,500, 6,700 meters into our drill program. We did have some slowdowns because of wildfires have been really significant right around us. And actually probably we still have hot spots around the camp now because it's hot again in the Yukon. So that slowed us down a little bit. But the great thing for Banyan is we've got a really long season. So we've been able to, because we've been going a little slower, we've been able to look at every hole, understand, we'll get some assays back and be able to confirm that we're seeing what we're seeing is what we want to drill out. We now have 3 drills on site, so we're able to ramp up, and people are available now, which is great. Kind of earlier in the season when everybody was ramping up, it would actually probably been a little challenging to staff our 3rd drill. But we're now ready. We're really confident in what we've got for a drill plan, and we'll have pretty strong news flow through the fall from the results that we have. And it was really important that we get it now. Money is precious. It's not burning a hole in our pocket. Flow through you don't actually have to spend until December of the 2nd year. There is a penalty which you start paying in the 2nd year, so it's better to spend it sooner. But we do have lots of options with cash in the bank. We're proceeding with the program that we've announced of 20,000 meters. We know that some of the holes we want to drill will be better drilled in March or April when the ground is frozen. But the bulk of the program, which we think will give us what we want to see in order to get a PEA that we think is going to be very compelling, we'll be able to achieve by the end of the fall this year.
Okay. So it's just you guys are going ahead just totally as normal. You got 2 rigs going. You've drilled over 6,000 meters so far in this season. Gold mining investors buy gold mining stocks, especially the juniors, for 2 main reasons. It gives them leverage to the gold price. In theory, and it gives them the potential of a new discovery and the upside that can generate, right? Unfortunately, in Banyan's case, you had that wonderful period from 2019 to 2022 where the share price went from 4 cents to 57 cents, and you made a new discovery. The gold price rose. Things were going great. Well, hit a big, hiccup here in the last couple of years, and certainly this summer. It's quite a contrast that gold is rising and trading well, and Banyan shares have been basically cut in half in the last couple of months, actually a little more than cut in half. And, we could talk about why that is, but the main reason is clearly the optics in the Yukon of, the First Nations and whether they support the mining industry following the, heap leach pad failure at, Vic Gold. And it seems like just looking at all the gold ounces in the ground that Banyan has, all the great results you've had the last 5 years and the current valuation, it seems to me as an investor that the market is saying that this deposit is no longer viable. What do you say to those investors?
Well, I say that's probably an incorrect assumption. There's a lot of noise right now. I know that's very real, and it's a big factor for us. I don't think it's the only factor though, because we have had probably extra pressure on our share price because of the incident at Victoria Gold, but the whole junior sector isn't getting any love yet. So we're not alone in that, and we weren't alone coming in this year. Yeah, the producers are great gold prices. They're starting to see some profits. There's a bunch of other things which we'll probably talk about later, because I don't want to skip the issue of that you wanted to get to in this question, which was about what about the impact of Victoria Gold in permitting. But there's a lot of other things going on out there, other things that are available for majors to purchase. So I think people see that there's going to be a bit of a time lag before juniors, even with significant assets, are looked at. And I don't necessarily think that's true either, because when you're like Banyan and we're trading at $6 an ounce, depending on whether you add in our Highland asset or not, and we have $17.5 million in cash in the bank on top of that. There's a lot of value there. And so people jumping to the conclusion that this isn't an economic project, I don't think is correct. We haven't actually put out our PEAs and our scoping studies, particularly in a rising gold environment. That will actually improve all the economics. And if you've looked at the metallurgical results that we've been getting, it's really kind of looks like it's more of a gravity flotation or a mill project. Sometimes, like Kinross, they had heap leach add-ons, but they may or may not be the right decision to have that. And I don't think that that's going to be the option. We don't know what happened at Victoria Gold yet, so we don't know if it's a regulatory issue, an operational issue, a design issue. We have to wait. Probably won't be that long before that comes out. In terms of environmental impacts, we'll know that fairly soon too. There's been some information on that, and the water quality monitoring is telling us some of that. But all of that is going to factor into what the permittability is for heap leach projects in the Yukon. But our strongest options are the CIL for recoveries with gravity. We haven't even put out what the results of that with gravity are yet. And then the gravity flotation has a pretty good result and a very low footprint, because you only get a 4% mass pull. So, very low tailings and material that gets treated. So we still have options on, and we have strong options other than heap leach. And quite frankly, some of the bigger companies would probably look at those, because ultimately then the project is a much longer life project and has a larger NPV if you even at lower grades, once you've got a payback. And so that's why it's so important what we're doing this year is for whatever the project is, having your highest grade areas or high grade areas that you can mine where you have enough ounces to get your payback and really drive your IRR for those first 10 years, because that's pretty much all that goes into it, is really important. And then whether the project runs for longer is is really where the company see the long-term payback. This is a big deposit, 7 million ounces, and we've in that is only to 200 meters of depth at the deepest part of the pit. We know mineralization goes down to 650 meters. We've done a lot of work this year looking for. We did some 3D geophysics, so we can kind of understand, and we see some clear target areas which we can see our potentialization. And so I'm pretty confident that I can arm wave and say, yeah, there's potential for 10 million plus ounces here, just at AurMac. And we have a huge land package, 300 square kilometers. And we are doing some generative work. We have been out doing some soil sampling on some targets that we identified from some of the previous soil sampling that we've done, and geophysics out on our Nitra property, which is off to the west. So not only do we have a deposit, but we still have discovery potential on the property. So I think our results in the fall will be pretty exciting. Right now, in the dull days of summer, and also with the overhang of Victoria Gold and what's happened there, I'm not expecting people to be paying too much attention. But come fall, people are going to be looking for gold assets that are significant. There are not very many road accessible projects that already have hydropower on the property. Those are pretty unique, and a 7 million ounce resource that's still open.
So in the PEA, do you intend to show three different ways to recover the gold? Will you show carbon and leach, carbon and pulp, and what those economics are? And will you show the heap leach and what those economics are? Will you show a few different ways that this mine could be built?
You probably will, but it really will depend on the test work that's ongoing now. If there is one which is clearly knocks it out of the park over the others, you'd probably focus your time and effort on that, because you want to go into, once you have a PEA or a pre-feasibility study, you can go into permitting or the pre-submission engagement process. So you really want to know what the project is. And so, you're best to say, okay, we've looked at these other ones that are options, and here's what the option is. Right now, we're maintaining optionality because different companies that might be looking at making investments in Banyan or potentially purchasing down the road have familiarity with different projects. There are some companies that will never build a heap leach. It's just not in their DNA. They know CIL, CIP, and there are some companies that's all they build, and so they may not be looking at a Banyan right now. And then combinations as well. Some of the early work that we did with our scoping studies has been to cover a whole range of scenarios and different tonnages and scales, and you do that iteratively and optimize it. And then I don't want to presuppose what the numbers are until we actually get some more test work and then rerun the models. And then once we get a new resource, which really shows where we think we've got this higher grade zone, which you'd start, and hopefully 2 years of even higher grade as a starter pit, that I think will probably be the key thing that tells us what the optimal processing is.
In your last news, I want to talk about the news that you put out a few days ago, both the board edition, the new chair, and also your comments about the First Nations and the Nacho Nyack Dun and their request, or what they said about mining activities in the territory. But first of all, I mean, I've known you since 2017. I every time I hear you speak, you talk about the First Nations and how important it is to have close dialogue with them and respect them. That's something that's clearly been a focus for you for the last 7 or 8 years. It's very important to you. What is your current dialogue with them right now?
Well, some of that broke up there, so if I've missed part of the question, maybe repeat it after. But we've worked really closely with the community. I've been involved in the Yukon, and I first did consultations with and in the First Nation Nacho Nyack Dun in Mayo way back in like 2000 and 1999, back when I was doing work with the KPMA. And I remember when the land claim agreement was signed there, and was I've been part of going to communities all across the Yukon during that time period and hearing from First Nations Since I became the CEO of Banyan, I've been very focused on Mayo and, chief and council, but also community members. And then what we do with the charity work, which I've done for 13 years. I've been at Banyan now for 8. But 13 years running a charity focused on First Nations and community, 100% volunteer. I've done that because I really believe in giving back to the community, and that youth are the future. And so people know me for that. And yes, right now there's tension in the community, and First Nations very busy. They've got lots of consultants and meetings, and they're getting all kinds of information that they need to process. So I get why. We have been in communication with them. We did receive a letter from them. We responded to them. We've had meetings. We'll hopefully have another meeting fairly soon, when they have time. We'd reach out to the executive director. We do all that we can to stay in communication, but not be annoying, because they've got a lot on their plates. They've got the new mineral legislation. They've got what's going on with Victoria Gold. They've got permits, and I can see why the government in the release said, okay, well, we're not going to consult on permits for 2 months, so that you have a chance to get all this other work that you're working on done, and focus on that, and then we'll resume it. And that's that's an interesting choice. It doesn't really affect Banyan because we have our permit till 2028. But anyway, the relationship's important, and it will be something that we continue to work on. I spend time in the Yukon. I've been up there for 3.5 weeks already, since the incident happened. I'll be back in the next couple weeks, and spending time and making sure I'm accessible for people to talk to. So that's, we're doing what we can in the context and respectful of how busy the First Nation is.
So what's your understanding of their request? Because I heard the Chief Hope speak twice in the last couple of weeks, and in one conversation, she mentioned, Cantex stopped their program this summer, and she mentioned Snowline, but Snowline has 5 rigs going. So, and Snowline put out a news release saying a few things, but they're continuing to drill. So when they say mining activity, are they talking about placer mining? What are they talking about?
I believe they were referring to everything. And I think, when you're in a crisis kind of mentality, it's hard to maybe think about, oh, we don't know what's going on. So, I think that good communications. We responded with what we were doing, and we've been really busy with managing the assistance with the forest fires that have been around, and the forest fire that was potentially threatening Mayo. And we did that last year as well. So, we didn't really have the option of shutting down our camp and leaving, because we needed to be there to do site protection and also to house the people that were helping to keep the forest fires down. And we did make some of our bulldozers available for that, and our water trucks, so that that did slow us down a little bit, because that equipment wasn't available to us and a couple of those people. And we took the time to be able to look at our core more closely, make sure that we really had a good drill plan. We had one drill going. We had a 4 to 5 day period where we stopped drilling during that, and it really was because there were all these other factors going on. And then we got back up to 2 drills, and we have the 3rd drill there, and we're just ramping that up now. So, we did say that, we wanted to talk to the First Nation, about what that meant, because it has implications. Our employees, many, I think we have 5 or 6 NND citizens right now, from Mayo, and that is important, that people have stability, particularly when things seem, there's lots of anxiety around. So for me, those commitments to our Yukoners and our employees are important, our contractors, and of course to our shareholders. What we've said we're going to do, and the flow through money we've raised. We have a lot more flexibility than companies that have a really short window to spend their money, whether you're fly-in or not. So we had a little bit of flexibility to slow down a little bit. And now kind of that the crisis seems to be passing. I think that, that we'll be able to have more conversations with them about, what do they want to see us do now. We did in our permitting, if you look on, which is all online, you can see that we really put a lot of effort in accommodating the concerns of the First Nation in how we do our exploration activities. They're concerned about roads and trails and historic roads and trails, and that's all. They're really important conversations that we've had. And community wellness is a huge priority of this chief and council. So for me, looking after the people that we have, making sure they've got stable jobs and security is part of that wellness, being part of a family and having meaningful work to do. So, we like to think that we're thinking about what's important to the First Nation in the work that we do. We uphold the highest environmental standards in our work. We do progressive reclamation, which are all things which we know are really important to Nacho.
Okay, I'm going to ask you a challenging question, but this conversation is about challenging questions. What's your understanding of what happened at Vic Gold? How did this accident happen? And what's your understanding of what the implications are for the environment? I'm hearing so many different stories. It's hard to put it together in terms of the levels of cyanide in the water, and is it toxic or is it not toxic? And definitely, the media in Canada seems to have really taken to this and tried to make it as negative of an optics as they possibly could. And the mining industry is a punching bag around the world, and it's always easy to attack this industry. What's your take on what exactly happened?
That is a tough question, and I'm an engineer, so I'm not going to get out there and say anything until we hear from the expert panel, because that is why you get an independent expert panel. Victoria Gold has their own experts which are on it, and the government's going to hire theirs. So it's risky for anybody to go out there and be saying, I've seen a lot of the analyses that you've seen on various websites and people that do satellite imagery, and all of that is conjecture. Some of it I go, that's interesting, but I'm not sure how that happens. But it's we just have to wait until we actually get the real information from um, the people that are actually there to look at it. No, I haven't been there, walked on it, looked at it. So looking at a photo doesn't actually give you the real information. So I'd love to answer the question if I could, but I, having not even been there and looked at a few photos and seen a bunch of conjecture out there, and there are a whole lot of opinions out there. And the early days, some of them were completely wrong because people didn't even understand, where the landslide happened and why, and not why. So I think we got to wait on that. Yes, the media has been very sensational on some things, and you saw some things like where CBC had the cyanide level out by an order of magnitude, and then it took them quite a while to correct it. And you can see it's corrected now, the 0.005 rather than 0.05. So 50 versus 5 ppb, and drinking water is 200 ppb, the Canadian standard. So yeah, there's a lot of misunderstanding of cyanide levels. And that's a whole topic that if we want to talk about cyanide, that's like a 15-minute conversation in itself, the different types, how it breaks down, what forms are harmful. And probably not something we have time to go through right now, but there definitely is a whole lot of, and there is a website. And from the last briefing of the Yukon government officials, which was environment officials, nobody there was overly stressed out about the levels of cyanide, in my view. So I think that tells something, and the fact that they're not up there with also tells something. Anyway, the communication. I would love to see, the government, Victoria Gold, and the First Nation actually get together and be talking about the same thing, and work towards solutions. And I think Donna Hope said that yesterday in hers. So hopefully we see things come together as people kind of get a sense of what's going on, what the scale of it, and things can kind of calm down a little bit. And I think they have calmed down. And hopefully because that's what's best for the industry, right? NND had a really strong relationship with Victoria Gold for a lot of years, and Victoria Gold did a lot of good in the communities, hires a lot of people. There's still NND citizens working up there right now, helping, and so I think that's the perspective that I hope we get to, because I care about the community, I care about First Nation Naktunak Dun. All those people are people that I know and care about.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. There's a lot of stakeholders here, and this was not intentional. Nobody wanted this to happen. I mean, that's for sure. And we don't know why it happened yet, And the way to fix it, the way to move forward is for everybody to work on the same team and not to be against each other in certain ways. Going back to Banyan and the share price, which is like, it's always interesting because when share prices are rising in this sector, sentiment is very positive, and I get positive comments on some of the CEO conversations I have and some of the things I put out on social media. I get positive feedback. When share prices are falling, I get a lot more negative feedback. I get people saying things about me personally, saying things about the CEO of the company. And that's just the way it is. That's just how things are. And that's the way that humans are wired, right? So with the share price down, a lot of the optics of why it's down, and I'm just going to tell you candidly, you know, you know, you know, the acquirer of Banyan was supposed to be Vic Gold. At least that's what everybody thought. So now with the Vic Gold balance sheet severely compromised and the cash flows slowing to a trickle, that seems to be off the table. And instead of a buyer of Banyan, Vic Gold might be a seller of Banyan shares. What's your response to that? And who else could come in here and take that stake if that's what happens?
Well, I think that shows that people weren't listening very well when I said that one of my key jobs was to make sure that they were not the only potential purchaser of Banyan. And I think that there are lots of options for potential acquirers of Banyan. And it may not have been Victoria Gold, given that we weren't seeing positive heap leach recoveries. The synergies with Victoria Gold might not have been that great. So I think, I was actually leaning towards looking at a lot of the larger senior producers as potential acquirers versus single asset juniors. And there's a whole range of companies out there, single asset companies that are looking for additional assets, so they're no longer single asset companies, and senior producers and mid tiers that are interested in other assets and would have the balance sheet to advance a Banyan. So, and people who know me know I'm a very active CEO. I do my, whose books are the financings. I don't rely on other people to do all that for me. I make sure I manage the relationships with my large shareholders. I may not know everybody who's selling, because sometimes people don't tell you straight whether they're selling or not to the CEO. But I do know some of the people that are buying, and some of the people that have expressed a lot of interest recently. We've had interest over the years. We have a data room where people can actually look at it. I'm trying to make sure that I'm communicating to people about the advancements we've made and that we think are going to be significant in the next iteration of our resource, with the constraints in our block model that we think we can see and demonstrate geologically that can find that higher grade. And that's what many of those interested parties have been waiting for, is the higher grade there that drives that beginning economics. So I'm out talking to many of those people when, I'm obviously not a seller. I'm not in control of when Victoria sells that, but obviously they're going to want to get the most money for it possible if and when they want to sell it. And they haven't indicated to me yet that they are. But I am out there in advance, making sure that people have enough information so that when that and if that happens, there is multiple parties that are interested, not just one. And it's not they're not going to just dump shares in the market. Like they're sophisticated people, and they've got lots of connections out there. There's private equity out there looking for stakes in gold companies as well. So, and there's private equity companies that have a lot of money. So I think there's a lot of options, and that's one of the main things that I've been focused on. So it might be an overhang in the market, but I don't think it's a reality. Even if it ever ended up with a receiver, I'd make sure I go and say, hey, here's a whole bunch of potential buyers that you should make sure you talk to, rather than just wait for them to do that. Like, that's not a very proactive CEO if you're going to stand there. It's like standing on the railway tracks and waiting for the train to hit you. And that's not something that I'm known to do.
We'll take a question from the audience. If somebody would like to ask Tara a question, we'll open up the floor. Just ask to be a speaker, and I'll activate your speaker capabilities. It just strikes me, there is an old saying back in, I think it was a big oil tycoon in the mid 80s said it's cheaper to buy a barrel of oil on the floor of the stock exchange than it is to find it out in the field. And I feel, looking at Banyan's valuation here, I feel like it's cheaper to buy an ounce of gold on the floor of the stock exchange and Banyan shares than it is to go out and find ounces of gold actually, with a core rig. The valuation has gotten to the point where, I think you're the cheapest gold ounces in the ground in Canada, if I'm not mistaken. If somebody can find one that's cheaper of this scale, with multi-million ounces, please, let me know. How do you turn this bus around, Tara? How do you get the market and investors to appreciate the value that you've got in the ground and that this is going to be a mine?
Well, part of it is just doing the work. Like, we actually need to demonstrate from the drilling that high grade's there, and that's the other key thing is we've got some third party validation. Henry Marsden from Ex-Humana has been an advisor to us. He came up to site. Moira Smith also came up to site from Liberty Gold. Very, very smart. Having them there validating what we're seeing, what we're doing for the model, and that gives me a lot of confidence. So there's what we're doing technically to get confidence for the sophisticated mining investors, corporates, others that are looking at the project, and then there's the marketing piece of it, which is more focused on the retail. So there's different audiences, which will be part of our plan for how we're going to ramp up from here. Right now, I'm focused on those institutional investors, corporate investors, people that are interested in the stock. It's the dog days of summer. There's not a lot of retail investors, and I think retail investors are very well aware of things that a lot of the juniors aren't getting a lot of traction, not just Banyan. And one of the things that's happening that's taking a lot of people away is that Newmont sale process, which includes a bunch of properties, including coffee in the Yukon. The good thing about that is a lot of people are looking at the Yukon permitting, understanding what's going on. And if they're not successful bidders on coffee or the package, they'll be looking for other assets. So I think once that sale process completes, and it's supposed to go till the end of the year, there will be a bunch of people that have cash that have been looking at more mature assets that'll have to go down to other assets. So, timing is everything. In September, we'll have various marketing events, but we're certainly not rushing to spend a whole lot of money, I think, in the next 4 to 6 weeks, because I don't think it really is going to turn the dial. But yes, we have a plan with the results that we've got from our network, our drilling, being able to demonstrate technically and then eventually getting our PEA. And a lot of companies see leads up as they get toward a lead up in their share price as they move towards a PEA. So that's a known factor for lots of companies. So, as we go towards that at the end of 2025, we should get some momentum.
Hey, I've activated your speaker capabilities. Go ahead and you can ask Tara a question, John.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I would have honestly loved to stick around and listen longer, but regarding the topic we're discussing here, I would like to say that there are really a lot of opportunities around the world that you should look at, which are very cheaper. And one thing I would like to say is that there are lots of videos also on YouTube telling the conditions here in West Africa, which is where I base. And there are lots of gold mines that need that need funding, and this funding is not very expensive. It's just money for equipment and permitting.
Hey, do you have a question for Tara about the topic that we're talking about?
No, sir, not at all.
Okay. Okay. Back to the topic at hand. Two more questions, Tara. Tell us about the board addition that you announced just a few days ago. She seems like a superstar, and then new chairman.
Yeah, great. Haley is, I think, a superstar. Halsell Whitney is her last name. She's worked at Glencore and Xstrata, zinc, palladium, platinum, and gold. Most recently, the general manager of Wesdome. Certainly has a tremendous amount of operational experience, seeing what works, doesn't work, and didn't. She started out at the bottoms, worked her way up as a chemical engineer all the way to GM. So, she's got some grit and also a lot of experience, and made some great changes when she was at Wesdome. So for us, that's hugely valuable. We're moving into this pre-PEA phase, designing a project, having directors who understand what the key economic drivers are, what we need to look out for, where other people have made mistakes, is really, really valuable. So we're really pleased to have her join the team. We'd been looking for another board member for a while, so it was great, to be able to bring her on board. Mark Blyth's been on the board for a while, also a mining engineer with lots of experience in the Yukon. He was willing to be our non-executive chairman, which is really important. We hadn't had a formal chairman since our board member left, and he was the chair. So I think it really strengthens our team to make sure that we've got proper governance and the structures in place as we move forward and get back to being a 100 million market cap company.
What's the role of a non-executive chairman? I mean, I see it's so interesting in the junior mining sector because some chairmen are very active, extremely hands-on. In some ways, they run the company, and in other companies, the chairman I never see, never hear from. I'm not even sure that they're involved in any way. So, what is his role as chairman?
Yeah, and that's an yeah. So being independent's really important in my view. Some people like to have executive chairmen or chairs that are not independent. I think from a governance perspective, you're better to have an independent chair, which really is managing the board and showing that the board is making decisions. So yeah, it is a key difference. And I haven't really liked the executive chairman model because it's kind of like you have two CEOs at times when you have a really active chair and an active CEO. So for me, I think this is the right model for Banyan and the right people. And it certainly has, I think, sets us up for success. We've got all the skill sets on the board that we need. We did, we evaluated all of our skill sets through a kind of a matrix. What skill sets do we have? What skill sets do we need to really get us through the next phase? You broke up a bit there, Robert, so I might have missed what. I don't know why you keep
Oh,
breaking up, but I
I
sometimes
don't
only hear
know.
part of your questions.
I don't know why I'm breaking up either. I got 5 bars, 5G. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so we're winding this down. What keeps you going during the hard times? And has the thought ever crossed your mind that, hey, I've got a great resume, I've got a great track record, I could get a job with a big gold mining company somewhere? Has it ever crossed your mind that maybe it's time to move on from this company and just get a bit of an easier job?
Well, comparatively, because we've got money, it's actually not like Banyan's in pretty good shape. Like I know what we've got ahead of us. We've got a plan. We've got money in the bank. We're being very cautious with how we spend our money, making sure. But compared to lots of companies out there that are really stressed that can't raise money right now or have to raise it at even more dilutive prices, I actually I don't think my stress level is as high as some of them. So I worked for a corporate for once, so that's not necessarily my dream job either. And I'm a builder, Robert, so I love the excitement and the challenge. And yeah, that comes with some uncertainty, but that's all part of this. And I knew what I signed up for. I'm also a big shareholder. So I've got $2 million into Banyan. So I am very vested to make Banyan successful. The share price being down, yeah, I think about the implications of that, and I'm very focused on what do I need to do to get the share price up, and we do have a pretty good plan to get us through the fall, and where I think we'll see our share price appreciate, particularly as the noise kind of comes down. I have always told people that there will be a time for me to exit, and any CEO needs to think about that. For a CEO that's good at exploration and potentially even permitting and studies to build a project, probably that's a very unusual scenario because they're different skill sets, and building a mine is a very complicated, and you really need to know what you're doing. So if that's where Banyan goes, yeah, certainly I'd be looking to replace myself, and you'd think about a good succession plan to do that, so that you preserve and I preserve my shareholder value there. So I think that's important for any CEO to kind of think about when their time is. Do I think it's now? No, I think I can add a lot of value to Banyan right now, and we've got the best plan ever. And that's kind of what's unfortunate is, June 24th, when we had an investment conference, but that's actually when we had our technical advisors on site. We had all the holes laid out that in the back, and we were walking and looking at all the different core, really understanding what was going on geologically. And I sort of think we made a bit of a breakthrough in that all this work that we're doing, we think our hypothesis is right, and that will be a game changer for this project. So all this other noise and what's happened since, we're still in that good position of having a great project, which we think we can advance and will one day be a mine, and money in the bank to do that. And we've made sure that we're making sure that money lasts us a long time. So yeah, when that time comes up, and somebody comes and makes an offer or two, that can happen any day. Hopefully not at 15 cents, because I don't think that would make any of my shareholders happy. Even if 100% premium to that probably wouldn't make some of my large institutional shareholders happy. So I have some work to do, and I'm not a quitter. So I definitely have the stamina and the drive to continue to advance Banyan and to get it to a place where I fulfill the commitments I've made to my shareholders and to myself with making an investment in this. I got a lot of years in.
I'm looking at the latest filings, and I'm not sure it's correct because some of the SETI insider filings are a little bit off at times. But the latest one, you put 200,000 in the most recent financing at 27 cents. And it shows you currently own 10.19 million shares. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I have some in my company as well, and my spouse has some as well. So it's a little larger.
It's like 12 million or 13 million total.
And then I have options as well. Yeah, it's 4%. So
okay.
I don't look at it daily recently because it would probably give me heart failure.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I think it's about 13 million, 12.
the junior
It's
mining
just under
sector is
13.
crazy like that because if somebody owns 13 million shares and the stock moves 5 cents, it's more than $500,000 in one day change. It could be up or down. It's kind of crazy. So it's probably best you not look at it every day.
Yeah, you can't. I got to focus on getting work done, talking to shareholders. I'm not busy looking at that
yeah.
every day. You only have so many hours.
All right. So final final point, Tara, what can shareholders expect from Banyan for the rest of 2024? When do we get the first set of drill results, and are they going to be good?
Well, we're starting to get some assays in. You need complete holes, and there's no point putting out, one hole with this type of a deposit. So I think they're going to be good, and good is relative. Snowline's holes recently were fabulous. So hats off. Shows what this geology, these intrusion-related deposits can have. And I do get asked, are we still looking for our intrusion? And yes, some of the geophysics that we did and the ZTEM survey that we're going to do this year could help us with targeting some of that. But now I'm off topic, Robert. What was the question?
When do we get the first set of assays, and are they going to be good? That's the most important part. Are they going to
So
be good?
yeah, I think they're going to be great. I like what we're seeing geologically. I know you can see mineralization in this core, and we're drilling, infilling in power line right now in the areas where we had nice holes. So, part of where the first mining pit would be. We're just about to start doing a little bit of drilling on airstrip for the first time since 2020. Because we know that there's some areas there with some high grade that we never followed up on. And so, we'll start to get results late August, probably put them out starting in September. And, you want to have enough of a batch to make a meaningful news release. And and we'll keep drilling till late October. So drill results will go into January, February of 2025.
All right, Tara, Christie, thank you so much for taking all these hard questions, and I wish you the best and Banyan the best, and I'll see you at Beaver Creek.
Yeah, well, thanks for being a shareholder, and we've appreciated your support over the years and others on the call. And it's up to me to get out there and deliver.
All right, thank you. Have a great weekend. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.